Hi, I'm Morgan McComb. I'm your teaching assistant for your Writing 100 class, and today I'm going to teach you how to read. And I know me saying that is probably surprising to a lot of you because you consider yourselves literate since you have made it to college. What I'm going to talk about today is critical reading, which is not necessarily what we focus on in high school, or at least I didn't. So today I'm going to just walk you through some steps that can help you maximize your time and also help maximize your understanding. I think a lot of times whenever we're writing, and a lot of you expressed this in your journals this past week, we get done reading and we feel like we've done it, and when we're asked to write about it, we just have no idea what we're going to say. But it is true, and you have to learn to become a good reader to become a good writer. You have to be able to recognize what it is that you like in other people in order to develop your own style, to think more deeply, etc., etc. So I'm going to offer you a couple things that you need to do. Actually, technically 3 things, not a couple. I'm going to offer you 3 things that can just help you not only in this class, but in all of your other classes. I think it applies across disciplines, across subjects, and it's just good studying and reading strategies. So here we go. For the first one, we have to figure out how you work best. So when I say figuring out how you work best, I mean, especially in these first couple months of college, figuring out what times of day seem most productive for you, figuring out how you can get into a rhythm. All of those things are really important. I know I'm a morning person. I do not do productive work after 5 p.m. It's just not gonna happen. I know a lot of people in my life who are night owls, who would like to stay up all night, they sleep late, and they get everything done. You just have to figure out what works for you. And that brings me to point number 2, which is that you need to give yourself time. Scheduling is really boring, and getting a planner is not particularly sexy, but it's something that you have to do in college because you have a lot of stuff you have to keep up with. Just earlier this week, because I didn't write something down, I totally forgot that it was due. It was a mad scramble. So even though I'm a professional college student at this point, I still do it. But you also need to start to figure out and pay attention when you're doing classwork, how long it's taking you. So that way you can prioritize time and know about things that say you can read in 20 minutes on the bus, or other things when you have to like sit down in your good study place, wherever that may be, and just drill into something that's maybe more difficult to understand. So a couple things that help me quantify time and also help me keep from being distracted. One thing is called the Pomodoro method. You might encounter this again, or you might have already encountered it. There's actually a website that I'll post for you where it allows you to document your study time in 30-minute intervals. It's 25 minutes and then a 5-minute break. This works for a lot of people I know in terms of just kind of a rapid fire getting small tasks done. And you can also adjust the times, like if you need to take a 10-minute break, again, figuring out what works for you. But it's a good resource to just kind of start actually doing small increments of time working up so that you've got these big study sessions that don't feel so taxing. Another thing, which admittedly is very personal to me, and all of my friends know I have it, is I never buy apps, but I did buy this app called Forest, and what it does is that you can also set it up in increments, up to 2 hours, I think, something like that. And it won't let you touch anything else on your phone, and while that's happening, you're growing a tree, and then you have a little forest of all your accomplishments. And I know it sounds really silly, but for me as a visual learner, and also on days when I just don't really feel like I've done anything, I like to go and look at this forest that I've built of time devoted to school. And that way it also keeps you kind of motivated, even though there's not necessarily any true reward. I think you can actually plant trees with it, but it costs more money, and I am a broke graduate student, so I haven't really participated in that. But there's all of these different ways and all of these different apps that you can use to help you just not be distracted and just get in the habit of these things, because a lot of college and a lot of reading and a lot of writing is habit. So think about how you can start forming some habits, even if they don't look like everybody else's. And that brings me to my third and final point. Whenever you're reading, you have to annotate your text. Kelly has talked about this some last week. Your readings have talked about this. And I'll be honest with you, I was told to do this in high school and I often just did not do it. And whenever I got to college, I was like, oh, we really have to do this now. Cool. But I'm gonna show you how I do it. And again, remember, this is how I do it. Maybe you'll find some things in this process that you can apply to your own writing process. But if not, continue to just search for ways that text jump out to you, highlight what you want to highlight, take notes on what you want to take, look up whatever you want to look up. So I'm going to read a passage from our common book, What the Eyes Don't See, from the introduction, and just point out to you what I'm seeing and what it is that I think that's interesting, and how I would point to certain passages in the text to develop ideas for journals or reflections, or of course your papers. So the text you see up on the screen right now is from page 13 of What the Eyes Don't See. So I'm going to just go ahead and read it aloud for you real quick. And again, you can skip ahead about 2 minutes if you want to Not hear me read, but please do read it because we're going to talk about how to annotate it. This is the story of the most important and emblematic environmental and public health disaster of this young century. More bluntly, it is the story of a government poisoning its own citizens and then lying about it. It is a story about what happens when the very people responsible for keeping us safe care more about money and power than they care about us or our children. The crisis manifested itself in water, and in the bodies of the most vulnerable among us, children who drank that water and ate meals cooked with that water, and babies who guzzled bottles of formula mixed with that water. The government tried hard to convince parents the water was fine, safe, when it wasn't. But this is also a story about the deeper crises we're facing right now in our country. A breakdown in democracy, the disintegration of critical infrastructure due to inequality and austerity, environmental injustice that disproportionately affects the poor and Black, the abandonment of civic responsibility, and our deep obligations as human beings to care and provide for one another. Along with all that, which is a lot already, it's about a bizarre disavowal of honesty, transparency, good government, and respect for scientific truth. Those are demoralizing realities to face. But there is another story, another side of Flint, because it is also a story about how we came together and fought back, and how each of us, no matter who we are, a parent, an activist, a school teacher, a pediatrician, has within us a piece of the answer. We each have the power to fix things. We can open one another's eyes to problems. We can work together to create a better, safer world, a place where all children can develop without obstacles and barriers, without poisoned water or callousness toward their dreams. Okay, so I am someone who generally highlights a lot, and I'll underline a couple things too. So I'm going to walk through the underlines, and whenever I underline something, it's usually just a word I don't know, or maybe an event or a person that I just want to say, like, that might come back in my mind later, and I want to make sure I know what it means or who it is. So the first thing that I underlined here was the word austerity. It's about like halfway through the text here, so I'll underline that because I'm just not sure what that means. And then also disavowal, because I feel like I know what that means, but I'm not totally sure what that means. So I'll just go look them up. So austerity is like scarcity, a kind of deliberate withholding of resources in this case, in this context. And then disavowal is just someone who knows, it's a process of knowing what you're supposed to be doing and then deliberately not doing it, or deliberately ignoring it. There's a deliberateness in both of these words that's interesting. And so then I admittedly, again, highlight a lot of stuff. So I'm just going to put up the first thing that I highlighted right now, which was the story of a government poisoning its own citizens and then lying about it. I just think that's a really distinctive turn of phrase. Like, I think if I were to introduce this book, whenever I was going to write about it, it might be something that I would use from the book to say, like, this is ultimately what this book is about. It's really distinctive of her style. And whenever you think about using quotes, you want to use things that you can't get somewhere else. So you don't want to quote facts and statistics. You want to quote quotes that really speak to you or that seem personal or really deliberate for the writer. So the next thing I'm going to highlight is that big block that actually includes austerity, because basically that tells me what the themes and the subjects of these books are. So the first one, a breakdown in democracy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll take notes about that in just a second, but I'm going to highlight that because that just helps center the entire book, and that's what a good introduction does. And then I also highlighted the phrase bizarre disavowal of honesty, et cetera, because again, I think it's just a good turn of phrase. It's really succinct. It's well written, and yeah, it's really just kind of forward, and I appreciate that about her writing. Another thing I highlighted is, again, a story about how we came together and fought back. So a good counterpoint to the first highlight, right? So that she's really showing a multifaceted engagement with this particular topic, and that she also is ending on hope. So I have highlighted we each have the power to fix things as kind of like, a gesture towards hope, especially right now when everything can seem really hard and really desperate. And then I also highlighted children can develop, and I highlighted without poison water or callousness toward their dreams. And before I explain that last one, I'm going to go ahead and put up to the right of this screen how I would take notes on everything that I just annotated. Whenever I am taking notes, I go ahead, put the class, put the text, etc. Got that up top. And then I'm just kind of like summarizing or highlighting for myself what I think is just absolutely essential about the passage I just read. This is what I normally do. I go through and highlight and underline things. I might go ahead and look up some words, but then ultimately I finish like a section or a chapter, and then I just go back and see what still is standing out to me, because ultimately I can overtake notes and it takes a lot of time. And so it's nice to just kind of go through something, really grasp kind of the tone, the feeling, the argument, and then go back and see kind of what's absolutely essential. And yeah, it'll save you time, and I think it'll help keep you more focused as well. So I did just say, how Hannah Atisha characterizes the Flint water crisis, and then I've got that quote up there, and then major themes, ideas. And I put a lot of these in my own words, unless they were already really succinct. So I have Breakdown in Democracy, and I put that in quotes, and I put the page number because in case I were to use that, since it's such a short phrase, I can feel myself just accidentally adopting it, and you want to make sure you're always giving credit to anything that you find. And so make sure that you are citing those, and if you just go ahead and do it in your notes, you'll be like, what was that quote? You've got it right here. You don't have to go back through the whole book. The second one I paraphrased as government services being unequally distributed, also thinking back to the definition of austerity. The third one, poor and Black communities are disproportionately affected by environmental disasters. And then, that there's no common feeling of humanity left. So that's just how I'm paraphrasing them. Going ahead and getting into paraphrasing whatever it is you're reading will just help you develop original ideas and go ahead and start experimenting with your writing style. I also paraphrased that quote, that the story of Flint is a story of lies and a refusal to see scientific evidence. You've got here that I've got not all bad. She pivots towards the end. There are good stories here. So we have that to look forward to. And then gives us kind of a charge that we have the power to fix things, that it makes you not feel so helpless. But it also does say, all of us are part of taking action in crises like these. And then the last sentence, I highlighted that because for some reason it just echoed Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous I Have a Dream speech and his ethos of thinking of the children, where one day my children, it seemed like it was touching on something there. And I think there was just a rhetorical or a stylistic comparison that's interesting to me. So I'm just kind of riffing in my notes, but I'm also just writing down what's important. So whenever I have to go and write a paper about it, I'm not overwhelmed by thinking I've got to go back through the entire book. I can just call back on that knowledge and just do it piece by piece in order to help it sink in better and better my understanding of it. All right, y'all, thanks for watching my video. If you have any questions, you know where to find me, either during my office hours from 2 to 4 on Wednesdays, or you can always email me. I hope y'all have a good week. I hope you find this helpful, and I'll see you soon.